For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you here this afternoon. Well, not afternoon quite yet, pretty soon. Chairman Pai, as you know, a portion of my district is part of a peninsula. I don't know what's going on here.
The gentleman will suspend. Mr. Bilirakis, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Pai, as you know, my district in the Tampa Bay area of Florida is part of a peninsula. And during an emergency, this creates unique challenges as the bridges off the peninsula close and high winds. And up to 1 million Pinellas County residents are sent north to a limited number of west-east evacuation routes. So Pinellas County off the coast, the Gulf of Mexico. Luckily, we are close to approval of an additional evacuation route that will ease congestion. It's called the Ridge Road Extension Project, which we feel we're going to get the permit this month to extend the road from west to east. But separately, in 2016, the FCC modernized the wireless emergency alert system, requiring providers to better geo-target alert messages. This will also alleviate the road congestion from unnecessary evacuations. Have all providers complied with this requirement, and how will a full implementation of 5G enable even more specific geo-targeting of emergency alerts?
With respect to the first part of your question, Congressman, I'm pleased to say that the providers who participate in the wireless emergency alert system were ready to proceed with geo-targeting along the lines you suggested. Unfortunately, because FEMA had not yet set up that system for testing, we extended that deadline for another couple of weeks. The providers need to do 4 weeks of testing. So my understanding is that that system will be up and running in the very near future.
Good. I hope it happens, in early spring.
Absolutely.
You know why, with the hurricanes and all that, and natural disasters. Commissioner Carr, last year I had the pleasure of hosting a Pasco County Emergency Services Center. One of the issues discussed at the time was the desperate need for system upgrades, and thank you very much for coming down to my district, and I obviously, Chairman Pai, we welcome you back as well. I'm sure this is something that you hear about with the 911 centers all across the country, especially as many wish to move to next-gen services. What options is the Commission looking at to take advantage of technology improvements to help emergency service centers save lives? And how much money would it take to upgrade the country to next-gen 911 services? So in other words, if you can give me a round figure, it's so very important, obviously. So this is a public safety issue. If you could respond, please, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for your leadership on these important public safety issues. I enjoyed spending time with you at the Pasco County 911 Center. In terms of the general figure, the estimates I've seen range between $9 to $12 billion to upgrade the system to next-gen 911. And doing so is important for the reasons you pointed out. We need to have accurate, up-to-date, modern information at these call centers. And one step we recently took at the FCC was something we call the Z-Access, vertical location information, so that for the very first time, those 911 call centers and then in turn, public safety responders will know the vertical height of a 911 caller to accelerate response times. That's part of I think, broadly speaking, upgrade to next-gen technology that we need to keep supporting. So thanks for your work on this.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner O'Reilly, you have long advocated for better use of spectrum in both the licensed and unlicensed spaces. The Commission is now working on repurposing, and you alluded to this. I think other commissioners as well have alluded to this, on repurposing the 5.9 band, which was largely unused for nearly 20 years. Can you talk about the benefits of freeing up this spectrum that has gone unused for so long, And are the incumbents left with enough spectrum to engage in safety technologies? If you could elaborate on that, sir, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Well, I'll answer your second question is yes. I believe that that does address their needs compared to the 75 megahertz that currently is allocated. I think we can do it. And then one of the reasons I like the chairman's proposal so much and have been is because it looks very similar to things I've been advocating for a little bit of time. So I think it falls in line with things I've been pushing for, and I think that we're on the same page on that. And I think the commission's on the same page. Commissioner Rosenworcel and I have been working on this issue for quite a while. She articulated the reasons, the benefits that can come from having 5.9 and even when we do 6 gigahertz, hopefully early next year, the combination of those two bands and the existing 5 gigahertz band that we have already operational, wide channels, 160 megahertz, the capacity. I mean, I've seen upwards, and I know Commissioner Rosenworcel mentioned 70%. I've seen upwards of estimates of 80% of our commercial wireless traffic will be carried on unlicensed spectrum going forward. And that's what we're talking about, is it's the benefits to consumers and benefits to the underlying network itself. And that's unimaginable in terms of we talk about how much cost for this band or that band or what we can spend the money on. We're talking about trillions of benefits to the economy over a time frame.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Butterfield, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me also thank the 5 of you for your testimony today. I say all the time that you must have a special calling to do public service, and thank all of you for your service. Chairman Pai, Congress has tasked the FCC to regulate our nation's telecommunications policy in a fashion that promotes diverse voices. You know that? I know that. My research over the last few days shows that despite that mandate, minority broadcast ownership has never risen above 3.1%. Women's ownership has never exceeded 6%. And so my question to you is, and I want a yes or no answer, would you call that rate of ownership for minorities and women acceptable?
No.
Of course not. Thank you. Last month, Mr. Chairman, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals ruled for the 4th time that the Commission has failed to adequately facilitate and promote women's and minority media ownership. In light of that ruling, sir, will you commit to addressing the critically low rates of media ownership by minorities and women? Can you make that commitment?
Congressman, 2 parts to the answer. Number one, we have been making that commitment. I personally, as a person of color and a person who believes in broadcast